required, and I would actually think that it would be a better course of action to move things along that path and away from our own self-destruction before it gets to the point of needing those stockpiled guns and bombs. I mean, I don't know, folks, what do you reckon? Do you think it's better to shift the direction we're heading in before we kill each other and ourselves? Now, when it comes to the scenario of someone who will rob me and leave me for dead, as you put it, well, I can't help but think that there's at least a sliver of self-fulfilling prophecy in that sentiment. If we as a species even get to that point, then we only have ourselves to blame for allowing it to get to that point. I'd rather be that guy who's prepared but being able to say, I told you so, than someone unprepared and running around in a blind panic, killing and stealing for survival. However, I don't want it to get that far. I'm not as much preparing for that eventuality as I'm trying my best to spread this information so that it doesn't become a reality. And I can guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you sought your own personal way of pushing for this on a regular basis, then our survival and speedy transition to an RBE will be a certainty. Think about it. Question 5. I've never shot a gun in my life, but if your zeitgeist movement ever gains any traction, I will start taking lessons so I can be part of the armed resistance against it. Okay, why would you resist us? What harm do we pose? Are you that indoctrinated into the status quo that you would arm up against anyone who wishes to change it? I suppose in a sense this reminds me of a certain line from The Matrix, you know? You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Does that quote apply to this question and the frame of reference that it comes from? I think I remember the context this question was asked of me, actually. I mean, if it was in the context of simply not wanting the world to change, then sorry, you're just going to have to get over it. The world and time waits for no man. But no, I think I remember it was in the context of property rights, I think. But to elaborate on that a bit, the zeitgeist movement stance on property is something that many fail to even grasp, since the idea of having your own stuff is such a loaded concept that in a lot of ways it's purported to be a constituent of our freedom, which is actually erroneous. Let me lay down a few things about this. In an RBE, you will have an access abundance to what you need and what you want to make use of. Hence the idea of personal property as, number 1, a burden, and number 2, resource inefficient. Let's go over point 1 first, the burden. Why would you want to lug all this junk around with you when you can just carry around what you really need, which, by the way, won't be much at all, considering that you have an access abundance wherever you'll go? Because, of course, in an RBE, you can travel the world if you want to. No facility is probably going to be made to store all your crap that serves no function. So are you going to lug around a whole house worth of stuff with you wherever you go? Moving house is considered by many to be one of the top 10 most stressful things a person can do in their life. And part of that stress is the moving of all that stuff from one place to another. You see, we have for a long time been handed down generationally the notions and concepts of sentimentality and heritage and all this historical baggage that is completely irrelevant to our survival. We cling on to it for reasons that we think is function, when in fact it's just romanticism. Why keep that baggage? We have the technology to provide for the best of everything on demand. And yet you want to hoard crappy products for yourself that are designed to break anyway? Think of the issue this way. Personal property, replaced by an access abundance. If you need a camera, for example, you just go to a distribution center and you check one out. Kind of like how a library works. And once you're done with it, you return it. If, however, you wish to keep it, that's fine. But it's on you to lug it around and or store it. However, the realization here is that there is no more need to hoard things. See, when you think about it, it's not the physical device itself you need. It's the function it performs. Because it's all about scarcity. That's why we develop property, because scarcity. And on to point 2. It's simple logic that less products produced is less resources expended. So why not save a hell of a lot of resources and allow others to use the goods in a constant loop system? This means that there's no more need for 20 different companies to produce the same damn thing that's designed to break anyway, because they're competing with each other for market share, or multiplicity. Instead, you got all the minds that want to design and build that camera all working together to produce the best camera possible at that point in time. And no, that doesn't mean only one camera is going to exist, no. But just enough to actually facilitate a constant loop system for everyone who would have a need for it to use one. That is far more efficient and economic with respect of resources, don't you think? And if you're still feeling precious about personal property and that you don't want to give up your trinkets, keep in mind that I must stress this for posterity, okay? Listen up. No one is gonna take your stuff. Had to state that for the record just so you can't misunderstand me there. But overall, when it comes to resources versus personal property, not everyone in the world can have an equal amount of stuff. The finite resources of the planet won't allow it, so I'm sorry, but you're just gonna have to get over it, okay? Anyway, question 6. Even if this could work, I can't find a clear idea of the steps that should be taken to get to the picture the Zeitgeist movement describes. Unless you want a violent revolution of planting trees and constructing computer control centers, money truly is powerful. Governments change using the stuff. How would one appear by abolishing it? And how would you abolish it? Okay, well, this is an issue of transition, I'd say. But I completely understand your position, in a sense. The only thing that can be done at this stage is for mass awareness about the train of thought and the paradox of the monetary economic system to spread. We're aiming for a big enough percentage of the population to have their eyes opened so that when this ridiculous circus of an economy comes crashing down around our ears and the governments lose control of the people, mainly due to them being free thinkers and no longer sheep to the system, this will result in a majority of the influential population refusing to partake in the corruptions and inhumanity of our current system and push towards a new social and economical paradigm, an RBE. One thing that should be abundantly clear is that violence cannot achieve anything but an exacerbation of our current problems. In fact, it might move things backwards, actually. We need to operate with peaceful non-compliance. If you think about it, any law enforcement organization can only lawfully or legally crack down on you if you are acting unlawfully. But as long as you are peaceful, respectful and compassionate, what laws are you breaking? And yes, I know some of you may be thinking, yeah, but the cops are going to slap the cuffs on you anyway if they want to. Well, have you thought about what that statement says about your position on civil liberties? One quote that my friend Joel reminded me about recently on Facebook was one by Ian Williams Goddard. And the quote went as follows. A society whose citizens refuse to see and investigate the facts who refuse to believe that their governments and their media would routinely lie to them and fabricate a reality contrary to verifiable facts. It is a society that chooses and deserves the police state dictatorship it's going to get. The problem with transitions is that the conditioning of the monetary system propagates a continual cycle of materialism and apathy. People have grown to like their stuff and servitude and their money, partly because the incentive system has created what is known as the luxury stratification, and partly because it's the only thing that is condoned within the system. As Tyler Durden said, advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. And because anyone willing to say anything against the system is immediately labelled a communist or unpatriotic or nuts. The continual cycle of insatiable consumption continues unabated because of that. It's like we're back in the colonial era where ignorance ruled over reason by burning any woman suspected of being a witch. Anyway, question 7. What about the fact that one person can do something more useful than another, that some people work harder than others? What of it? An RBE is not a system that suffers from mass non-contribution. A minimum of only around 5% of the human population will be needed to keep things running. However, education will be structured in such a way that people will grow to want to contribute to the systems because they realize that whatever they do to better the systems also comes back to better their own lives. Self-interest becomes social interest. And if some people have a harder drive to contribute more than others, so what? It's not like anyone else is less deserving of the necessities of life, regardless of how much they can contribute. We're all alive. We are automatically equally deserving of what this planet and society can provide. You see, in an RBE, people will be free to do whatever they want. However, probably, with a mirrored principle that is given by Michael of Benicia. My rights end where your rights begin. Okay? The only time when those working harder should be entitled to a bigger slice of the pie, as it were, would be within the logic of a monetary system. But since we have empirically shown over and over again that a monetary system is not good for our collective and personal well-being, then how can rewarding the most hard-working be empirically grounded? Anyway, question 8. In order to get this project going, wouldn't you have to convince 6 billion people that it is a good idea? In a word, no. There's a very interesting and surprisingly brief video on the subject. It's under 3 minutes long, so it can't be that difficult to watch, right? It's by Douglas Millett again. It's called Population to Convince. If you can't find it through the details I just gave, just type TZM Social Evolution, one word, into YouTube. That's Doug's YouTube channel. Very, very awesome stuff on there anyway. But anyway, essentially he explains that we don't need to reach every single person on this planet. Just a certain percentage, and the idea and logic will spread of its own accord. If you think that we need to actively engage every single person on this planet in order to turn humanity around, then by all means a viral entity must initially invade every single cell in order to spread. Well, of course, this is utter nonsense. A single viral particle only needs to invade one cell, and then that invaded cell invades others. Now, consider the fact that there isn't just one person on this planet engaging people about an RBE. There are probably thousands upon thousands. Now, if we were a virus, and if the rest of humanity were healthy cells, and humanity wouldn't stand a chance. But, speaking seriously, it's obviously not as simple as that. The conditions